Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. I hope your day and your week have been going very well so far. College football week 3 is officially here. Got some great games and overall really fun slate. And as always, guys, I've got some great picks to go ahead and share with you. But first, as always, people, please make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. All right, guys, with a new week comes some new opportunities to go ahead and make some money. I have 10 picks to go ahead and share with you guys in this week's college football slate. But first, before we dive into today's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last week. And spoiler alert, you're going to be impressed. Don't act like you're not impressed. That's my god-awful Ron Burgundy impression. All right, so last week's picks, not technically today's picks, last week's picks, we dominated the board. 9-2 last week. The only picks we missed on were Ole Miss -7, and they did win by 7. So that was or -7.5, and they won by 7. So a very close miss there on the Ole Miss spread. To be fair, though, we had a lot of other plays that were close wins. And then we also had Michigan plus 6.5 did not cover. But again, overall, a really dominant week 2 slate. We had some really nice wins. The Baylor money line, which was an overtime, that was a good one. You know, UConn was a bit of a sweat. Iowa was a bit of a sweat. A lot of sweats last week. Colorado, a lot of close ones, but we did go ahead and take care of business. And now if you look down below, so 9-2 last week, almost 6 units we won last week, and we're now 16-9 overall this college football season. Coming off a strong week like that, let's see if we can't keep the good times rolling going into week 3. Without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and dive into week 3 college football picks. All right, guys, so the first game we're going to go ahead and take a look at here is Colorado at Houston. This is a Friday night game, so this is happening tonight, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. We're going with Houston on the spread here, -3.5, taking on Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. -3.5 for Houston. We're grabbing it for -118 over on FanDuel, and this is going to be the case for most of these plays in today's video, guys. They're available on a number of different sports books for varying odds. And don't worry if you lose track of the picks. I had some comments last week talking about, you know, making sure to put something on the screen so I can see what game we're covering. I will kind of stay more in the outlier screen so that, you know, less on my big face and more so you guys can see at least the matchup on screen. If you miss any picks, do not fear. We're going to have timestamps down below in the description, as well as all the final plays in the pinned comment down below. So if you do miss anything, don't worry. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to go ahead and follow along. And as an extra added measure of security, we also have a link for all these picks in the description as well. And it will say link for today's pick. So plenty of ways to go ahead and follow along with these videos. I know they're a little bit longer. But Houston -3.5 here is our first play for this week 3 slate. Colorado coming off a nice win over Delaware. They covered the spread, one of our picks that we won from last week. However, a lot of turmoil right now with Colorado, mainly in the injury department. Okay, Colorado's got a lot of guys who are definitely out and a lot of guys who might be out. And that's a tough part when talking about this game because a lot of these guys are still questionable. We know Charlie Williams, the tight end, is definitely out in this game. But a couple of big injuries. Amari Miller, the wide receiver, he is right now questionable with a hamstring injury. This is, as of this morning, he's doubtful. Okay, he was doubtful for the matchup. Nothing is confirmed just yet, but he is... It seems like he's more doubtful than he is anything else. We also have the transfer running back, Dallin Hayden. He is also questionable. He's now listed upgraded to probable, so that's a good thing. But still, a lot of key injuries. Now, Houston also has some injuries, but I think the injuries for Colorado are much more important in this spot. The other thing, honestly, is that Colorado's defense, they just haven't been fantastic. Now, from a scoring perspective, you know, they are in the top 60, not terrible, but look at their passing yards allowed and rushing yards allowed. This was a Colorado defense that was supposed to be superior this year. It's supposed to help carry the load with this new look offense that's still obviously trying to figure things out. Colorado's defense was supposed to be better this year, and through 2 weeks, it hasn't been. Now, they haven't been giving up too many points. If you look at so far this year in their 2 games, right, they played Georgia Tech and Delaware. They gave up 27 to Georgia Tech. They only gave up 7 versus Delaware, but it is Delaware. It's a much inferior opponent. I just don't think Colorado's defense has been all that impressive. Again, 94th in passing yards allowed, 122nd in rushing yards allowed, tied for 120th in the nation in yards per play through 2 weeks, 6.4 yards per play. Even their pass rush was supposed to be lethal. Some of that is injury, some of that's underperformance. Their pass rush has not been all that great. Now, to be fair, Houston's offense is also nothing really to write home about, right? tied for 58th in scoring. Their strength is definitely on the ground game, which, if you're looking at Colorado's run defense so far this year, that is not good because Houston is a top 50 rushing team in the nation. Their passing offense leaves a lot to be desired. They're tied for 80th in yards per play. This Houston offense is not a great offense by any means, but in this matchup versus a struggling Colorado defense, they do have the advantage. Now, on the flip side, this is where things get really difficult, and this is where I think Houston's going to end up winning the game, is with their defense, which has been really strong through 2 weeks. Now, granted, they played SFA, Stephen F. Austin, and they had played Rice. So, some weaker opponents on their side as well. Colorado, by far, will be the toughest team they played this season. But Houston's defense has looked very, very strong. Specifically their passing defense. Okay, 78 passing yards allowed per game. That's the third best mark in the nation. Again, we have to take opponents into consideration here. But Colorado right now, we don't even know what's going on with the quarterback situation. Caden Salter is apparently starting. He obviously had an illness last week, left the game early. There was rumors all week long that third-string quarterback Ryan Staub was going to start here. Obviously, Caden Salter did not look all that great in their first game versus Georgia Tech. He had his moments, but overall it was a disappointing performance. And then last week, comes out of the game versus Delaware. Julian Lewis and Ryan Staub, they both come in, and Staub actually played very well versus Delaware. So there are rumors now. Apparently, Caden Salter starting again. The fact that they're questioning starting their third-string quarterback only 3 weeks into the season, it should say something. There's just turmoil all around for this Colorado team. I just think Houston, they're more put together. They have the home field advantage here. I just think Houston is the better play. I don't love 3.5. I would have loved 3. That 3.5 hook. I've had so many bad beats on that 3.5 line. But I do think Colorado will struggle here on the road in this matchup. So our first pick in today's slate is Houston minus 3.5. All right, guys, we now move on into the Saturday slate. In the first Saturday game we're going to go ahead and take a look at here is number 4 ranked Oregon on the road taking on non-ranked Northwestern. First instance of Big Ten action for both of these teams, both Northwestern and Oregon. It's their first instance of conference play this year. I'm going with Northwestern on the spread here, plus 28.5, which I'm grabbing for minus 125 over on BetMGM. Best odds available to me. Now, you guys might think I'm absolutely crazy for taking Northwestern here, and maybe I am a little crazy here. Oregon obviously had a fantastic start. Now, granted, they haven't really played anybody. Oklahoma State, which I guess technically isn't an FCS school, but at this point, the way they're playing, they might as well be an FCS school. 69-3. Oregon beat them last week, and obviously their first game 59-13. So Oregon, they looked very, very good. To be fair, though, again, competition has to be taken into consideration this early in the season when it comes to the numbers, because Oregon's offense is averaging 64 points per game right now. I don't know if they're going to score 64 here against Northwestern. Look, Oregon's going to win this game. That I have no doubts about. Where I'm taking the spread here is you're giving Northwestern 4 touchdowns. It's a conference game at home. Northwestern's defense is no pushover. They've got a pretty strong defense. Now, their run defense leaves something to be desired for sure. You see right now through 2 weeks, 109th in the nation, giving up 170 rushing yards per game. That's not going to cut it when Oregon's averaging just shy of 300 rushing yards per game. It's not going to cut it, but they do have a very strong pass defense. Really what I'm hoping for here is that Oregon's going to run the ball, which will hopefully run the clock down. You're not going to see as many passing. The speed of the game will hopefully go by fast. There's also an element, and I know this is not a numbers-based thing, but Penn State's on the horizon. Oregon knows that. Penn State has a bye week coming up. They're going to have the chance to rest going into that Oregon matchup. Oregon plays Oregon State, which you could say is technically a bye week in and of itself, but Oregon has another game to play. They destroyed Oklahoma State last week. Part of that was the extra motivation that, the Oklahoma State, they made some comments about the cost of the roster and all these things. You could tell Dan Lanning and this Oregon team was motivated to crush them. I don't know if late in the game, if this is, Oregon's up by a lot, if they're going to leave all their starters in. This could be a spot late in the game where they start looking towards Penn State and they say, you know what, let's pull the starters, let's rest them. We got another game next week. We got Penn State on the horizon. I don't know if they're going to try to run up the score on this Northwestern team. And to be fair, I do think Northwestern defensively, they should be able to fare better than the two teams that Oregon has played. Really, the key is the number here. You're giving me plus 28.5. You're giving me a 4-touchdown spread. I think Oregon will win this. It's going to be very close. Oregon can definitely beat Northwestern by more than this. But I think it's a situation where Penn State's on the horizon. Oregon, late in the game, they laid it out versus Oklahoma State. They just kept putting it on. I don't know if you're going to see the same thing here versus Northwestern. They could go ahead and maybe take it easy in the later half of the game. Northwestern's offense also not that great. So Northwestern's going to lose this game. I'm sorry to all of the Northwestern students and fans out there, but you're probably not going to win this one. Really what it comes down to is I just don't think Oregon's going to put their foot on the gas from start to finish here. They might ease off knowing they got bigger fish to fry in just a couple of weeks. So Northwestern plus 28.5 at home. I think their defense is good enough to at least keep this game reasonable. But the key number here is at 28.5 point spread. It goes any higher, 27.5, 27. I definitely would not take this spread. But 28.5 is the key number here for Northwestern. All right, guys, our next game on the slate, we have Wisconsin at Alabama, 12 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. I'm going with the Crimson Tide here on the spread at home in Tuscaloosa, minus 20.5. Now I'm grabbing it for minus 140 on FanDuel. Looks like it's the best available to me. You do have a couple of these other sports books here. So a little bit more juice on this play that I would have liked. And to be fair, you can get this for I think the actual spread is minus 21.5. I'm buying a point down here because I think this could be a potential bad beat at 21.5. So I think 20.5 definitely the safer play. Always willing to sacrifice a little value if it means getting the better line. Now, Alabama obviously hasn't had the start to the season they would have hoped for, right? They lost to Florida State in a disappointing fashion. They did finish up. They followed that up, with a really solid next week game versus University of Louisiana Monroe. They did beat them 73-0, so you could definitely tell that Kalen DeBoer and the Crimson Tide, they took out some frustrations in that game. This is a really big spot for Bama. If you look at the schedule on the horizon, they have like 7 ranked games still to go on their schedule. So this is a game they have to win at home and take care of business because it's only going to get tougher from here. These are the wins you have to go ahead and take care of business. Now, looking at the Wisconsin side of things, they've got a couple of difficult things to look at, specifically their injury report. Billy Edwards, their starting quarterback, he is doubtful with a knee injury. Again, as of now, he's listed as a long shot to play on Saturday. So that's obviously a big You got your backup quarterback starting on the road in Tuscaloosa, not exactly where you want to put your backup in. Backup quarterback Danny O'Neal, when he's been called upon for Wisconsin, hasn't been terrible, but this is a level of competition that he has never faced before. And in Tuscaloosa, obviously, a very tough spot. The other problem with Wisconsin here is their offensive line has not been particularly great. Their offense in general hasn't been all that great. But in particular, their offensive line, it's left something to be desired. Not exactly what you want to look at going into a matchup with Alabama and that defensive front that they have. Wisconsin's offense through 2 weeks. Now they've played so far, Miami, Ohio, and MTU. Not exactly a tough schedule. None of these teams really have. They make them a little softer going into the season. But the Wisconsin offense has not blown me away. Now you put a backup quarterback in on the road against this Crimson Tide team that need to win this game and win it with some fashion points because, again, you got some really tough games on the horizon. That Florida State loss really put Alabama behind schedule in terms of their aspirations for the playoff. The Wisconsin offensive line questions that I have against this Alabama defense, although their numbers don't look fantastic this year, this defensive front is loaded with talent. It was just all around Alabama is the more talented team. I do think Bama's offense also. Now, Wisconsin's defense is pretty strong here, but I do think Alabama's offense has the explosiveness, to go ahead and take care of business against a pretty stout Wisconsin defense. The key thing here is Ryan Williams, the star wide receiver for Alabama. He obviously has been in concussion protocol. He is now listed for probable for this game tomorrow, so that's obviously big for Alabama. The key to this game for Bama is just stopping the run. If they can stop the run and force the ball into Danny O'Neal's hands, he will make mistakes. They can force some turnovers. I think Alabama can take care of business. It's a high spread, especially considering Wisconsin's defense, but Wisconsin has not been the program they were in years past. In these kind of bigger spots, we've seen Wisconsin kind of crumble and fall. We do have some head-to-head data here. The last time these two teams played, which was last year, Bama crushed Wisconsin 42-10. That was also an early season game. And this little insight provided by Outlier, Wisconsin are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games as an underdog. So a really good spot here for Alabama, minus 20.5 at home. All right, guys, we're now moving into the 3:30 p.m. window on Sunday. Not a ton of the noon games on Saturday am I really looking at. So now the 3:30 games on Saturday, I think I said Sunday. 3:30 on Saturday. This is the later afternoon slate. Our fourth pick in today's video, we're looking at the Oregon State-Texas Tech game. And I'm rocking with the over here, 62.5, which I'm grabbing for minus 110 on FanDuel. But again, a lot of different options if you want to go ahead and tail this play. Now, admittedly, I think that Texas Tech will cover the majority of the scoring load in this game. But I do think that Oregon State can contribute just enough to get to this over. This could be like a 40-plus point game for Texas Tech, if we're being honest. Now, if we look at their last 10 games, the over of 62.5 is actually cashing an 80% hit rate for Texas Tech. A lot of overs, okay? Their games are high scoring. So far this year, they played 2 games, 74 total, 76 total. Even going back to last year, 104 points at the Oklahoma State game. They just score a lot of points. This is a high-scoring offense with a defense that is, well, not great, but questionable. Now, Oregon State not as consistent with the higher-scoring games, but we do see that they can give up a healthy amount of points. You saw that last week. Obviously, another one of our picks. We had Fresno State last week against Oregon State. And you do see here last week, Fresno State, Oregon State, 36-27. So the total got to 63. So we just barely cashed this over, this line, in that week 2 game, against Fresno State. They gave up 36 points to Fresno State. This is Texas Tech, a much better offensive team than Fresno State. I think Texas Tech can pour it on. And again, Oregon State, they should be able to score at least a few touchdowns here to add to that total. Now, Oregon State's offense has not been great, but they do have a pretty decent passing offense. Now, Texas Tech's defense has been pretty good against the pass, but to be fair, again, Kent State and ARPB level competition comes into question there. But this Texas Tech offense has been explosive. Top 15 in passing yards, top 15 in rushing yards, 5th in the nation yards per play. Really every offensive thing, except for maybe red zone efficiency, they are one of the best teams in college football. One of the best offenses so far this year, and their defenses look decent. Some of those numbers will come down a little bit considering who they're playing here, but this Oregon State defense, 119th in scoring in the nation, 100th in rushing yards allowed, 55th in passing yards allowed. They're not really creating a lot of turnovers. Their pass rush almost non-existent. So I think Texas Tech should score a healthy. I almost took just their team total over, if I'm being honest. But I do think they will score enough. And again, Oregon State should be able to add a little bit to this total to get the over. If you don't feel comfortable with this one, I would at least recommend taking that Texas Tech team total over. I think Texas Tech is going to have a day playing Oregon State's defense, but it remains to be seen. I do stick with the overall total here because I do think the over will cash. So that's our 4th play in today's video. All right, guys, our 5th pick in today's video, we have one of the 3 ranked on ranked matchups in this week 3 college football slate. We've got number 6 ranked Georgia on the road taking on Tennessee, number 15 ranked Tennessee. Should be a really fun matchup. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, these ranked on ranked games, I'm not gonna go into as much detail in these videos because I already have separate individual videos for all of the ranked on ranked matchups. If you guys didn't know, we're doing a new video series this year called Clash of the Titans, where I go through all of the ranked versus ranked games through each and every week of the college football season and do a little bit more of a deep dive. I give out some more picks in those videos. So we already have the Georgia-Tennessee video out. We have the USF-Miami video out. The Notre Dame A&M video will be out later on today. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here. So if you want to listen to me to kind of rant some more about this game, give more plays, dive a little deeper, go ahead and check that video out. It's already in the channel, on the channel, I should say. But for this game here, I will give you guys my pick, and this is one of the same picks I handed out in that video. I just won't go into as much detail. I'm going with the Bulldogs here, minus 2.5 on the spread. Now, I got to be honest, this is a bit of an alternate line, so there is some juice on the play, right? It's minus 155 right now on BetMGM. The odds have actually increased. Yesterday, I got it for minus 151, I believe, on FanDuel. Now it's minus 155, minus 164 on FanDuel. I don't love the line of 3.5. If it stays at 3.5, or you're not willing to put the extra money down or take the lesser value there with that minus 155, I would just stay away. I think 3.5. I think Georgia does win this game. I just think 3.5 is a very risky point spread. It's going to be a tight game, a very close game, but I do think the Bulldogs pull it out on the road. These teams both have great elite defenses, and they both have offenses that have high potential, but have question marks, right? For Tennessee, they've actually lived up to that potential and actually exceeded that potential through the first couple weeks of the season. Transfer quarterback Joey Aguilar has looked very, very strong so far for the Volunteers. However, they haven't played a team quite like Georgia, so we'll see. And Joey Aguilar, to be fair, in his career, has never faced a team quite like Georgia, going back to his Appalachian State days. So, the difficult environment for him. We'll see how he holds up against Georgia. On the flip side, Gunnar Stockton and the Bulldogs offense, they haven't looked all that great through 2 weeks, and they've had some weak games. I mean, Austin Peay, Gunnar Stockton throws the football over 30 times. They only score 28 points. That's just not acceptable if you're Georgia. That being said, Kirby Smart has dominated this rivalry. They've won 8 consecutive matchups against Tennessee. The last time Tennessee beat Georgia, you got to go back to 2016. They also have not been able to score much. Josh Heupel is 0-5 as the head coach of Tennessee against Georgia, and they're averaging just 14 points per game in the Josh Heupel era against Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs. So you have the coaching advantage there. Kirby Smart has owned Josh Heupel up to this point. I like Georgia a lot in this spot. Again, 2.5 is the key here. I know it's a little bit juice. You say it may not be worth it. That's up for you to decide, but I do like Georgia on the spread. I'm willing to put a little bit extra on this one because I do think the Bulldogs, with their experience and whatnot, with Kirby Smart's coaching, they should be able to take care of business in this spot. So Georgia minus 2.5. That's our 5th play in today's video. I do want to real quick take this opportunity to talk to you guys about the sponsor of today's video, Outlier. Outlier is the best sports betting tool on the market. Everything you've seen, this screen that I'm showing you guys, I've shown you guys all the numbers, the data. I'm only giving you guys a little taste. There's so much more. There's insights, there's line movements, there's so much that Outlier provides. You scroll down here, there's so much more information that Outlier provides. I'm only showing you guys a little bit because we don't have time to really dive into every detail when it comes to what Outlier can give you for all these sports betting data. They have the betting percentages, they have the standing, strength of schedule, strength of victory, everything you could possibly need to make smart sports betting choices. They've got it. If you watch the channel for a while now, you know I use Outlier pretty much every single video that I do, whether it be focusing on player props, on spreads, on totals, whatever it be. Outlier is the tool that I use. They're the best sports betting tool on the market, and we offer a special offer. Use the link down below in the description and get a 7-day free trial to check Outlier out for yourself. It truly is the best sports betting tool, guys. It's going to make you a better, a more smarter sports bettor, and that's really important. Numbers are the name of the game when it comes to sports betting, and Outlier gives you all the numbers that you need to make those smart sports betting choices. So one more time, link down below in the description. Special thank you to Outlier for sponsoring today's video and a ton of our videos here on the channel. All right, guys, we're halfway done. We got 5 picks left in today's video. Our next game is another one of those ranked on ranked matchups. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because there's another video doing that already. But we've got number 18 ranked USF taking on number 5 ranked Miami, 4:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. I'm going with the Hurricanes on the spread, minus 17.5, which you can grab best odds available to me are minus 105 right now over on FanDuel. As I talked about in that other video, as impressive as USF has been this year, and they deserve their flowers, 2 back-to-back ranked wins for this non-ranked USF team to kick off the 2025 season, it's impressive. And they ultimately deserve to be ranked where they are. However, you can poke some holes into the logic of both of those wins. Yes, Boise State was ranked at the time that USF beat them, but Boise State was ranked in partial to the fact that, they were so good last year. They were a playoff team last year. Boise State is nowhere near as good as they were a year ago. They were getting credit for what last year's team accomplished. They're not that good this year. They're not a ranked team this year. Maybe they change that. Maybe they kind of get things going. But at least from what I've seen so far, not totally blown away by Boise State there. And then Florida, who is a solid team and supposed to be one of the heavyweights in college football this year, they really honestly just crapped their pants. They really did not play well. USF played a decent game, but if we're being honest, they put no pressure on DJ Lagway. They only got to him a handful of times. They have one of the lowest. I think the number I heard about was like their defensive line didn't get a single pressure the entire game. I don't know how that happens, how you don't get at least one time pressure from the defensive line. That's what I read somewhere. I don't remember the source, so don't necessarily quote me on that. But if you go look on the right side of the screen here, it makes sense because USF's defense, look at their, tied for 103rd in the nation in sacks per game, tied for 109th in the nation in QB hits per game, tied for 105th in tackles for loss. This is not a pass rush that really gets to the opposing team. And that's a problem. Okay, now Florida had a clean pocket most of that game. It just came to a matter of a lot of drop balls, some bad decision making from DJ Lagway, some bad turnovers. Florida killed themselves in that game. Okay, they beat themselves. Maybe kill themselves, not a term you want to use. They beat themselves in that game. Miami is not going to be that. They're not going to make the same mistakes that Florida did. Their offensive line is better. Their quarterback is more experienced, more seasoned. They have a better defense. Across the board, Miami's a better team than Florida. They are not going to make their better coach. They're not going to make the same mistakes that Florida did. So I like Miami on the spread minus 17.5. As fun as the USF run has been, and as impressive as it's been, I think this is a legitimate top 5 team in the nation. They're ranked number 5 for a reason, obviously. This is a legit playoff team, a legit national championship contender. And I just think USF, this is a different class of team than what USF has faced so far this year. So Miami minus 17.5 to me, it makes a ton of sense. I think Miami rolls and dominates USF in this game. All right, guys, next up, technically traveling back in time here, we've got Pitt at West Virginia, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday, so going a little bit back in time. We've got Pitt and West Virginia going the total here over 55.5, which I'm grabbing for minus 110 odds right now. Over on BetMGM, best odds available to me. The key thing to know here is these offenses play very, 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 very fast. Their pace of play, their seconds per play, among the higher ranked teams in college football. So this team both these teams play at a very fast pace. Now, actually, both their defense do rank pretty decent. Both top 40 ranked scoring defenses. Pitt, their rushing defense, pretty damn good. And obviously, that's where West Virginia, their strength is their running game. On the flip side, West Virginia's defense, not as strong necessarily, but top 40 pass defense in the nation. Obviously, that is where Pitt's strength has been. And again, like we talked about with a lot of these picks here, the first couple weeks, they haven't really played anybody. If you look down below here, so far this year in terms of strength of schedule, strength of victory, West Virginia tied for 99th. Pitt a little bit better, tied for 52nd. Obviously, they played Central Michigan last week, Central Michigan right there. And then you look at the strength of victory there. Now, Pitt tied for 4th. I don't really know how that works because they've beaten CMU and Duquesne so far. But, we're mainly looking at strength of schedule here. Mainly speaking, neither of these teams are all that battle-tested. But, and I'm really speaking about that for the defensive side because the defense, obviously, the numbers right now don't look terrible. But these are both the best offense they have played so far this year. Less than 23 seconds yards per play. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. 23 seconds per play for Pitt. 23 seconds per play. I forgot the numbers I wrote down. 23 seconds per play for Pitt, about 21 seconds per play for West Virginia. So these teams play very fast, very quick, and although the defensive numbers are strong on paper, there are some weak points. I do think this will be a fast-paced game, a lot of points. 55.5 to me is a bit generous. I think you're going to see a very high-scoring game. Now, the last time these two teams played last year, you got that, right? The total ended up getting to 72. It was 38-34. Pitt won that one. So the last time these two teams played, it was a high-scoring matchup. I don't see why that would change this time around either. A lot of points, a lot of fast-paced football here. So the over 55.5 to me seems like a good play. I apologize. I know I was kind of stuttering and stumbling over myself when describing those picks. I just was trying, I have all my numbers and notes written down here and trying to pick through them and find what I'm looking for. Fortunately, got a little jumble there, so I apologize. All right, guys, 3 picks left in today's video. Next up, we're now moving on to the later night games on Saturday. We have Arkansas at Ole Miss, 7 p.m. kickoff. I'm going with the Razorbacks, Arkansas here on the spread +7. You can grab that for -130 over on BetMGM. I got to be honest with you guys, I love this Arkansas team, especially quarterback Taylor Green. He has looked very, very, very strong here for Arkansas to kick off the year. One of the best quarterbacks in the SEC right now. He is the key to me in this game for Arkansas. Now, again, I'm not picking Arkansas to necessarily win the game, but I think this Arkansas team is good enough to go ahead and keep this close. Now, last time these two teams played last year, Ole Miss destroyed Arkansas, okay? 63-31. It wasn't even close. To be totally fair, very different teams last year, specifically on the Ole Miss side of the things, okay? Different offense with Jackson Dart leading them last year. This year, they have Austin Simmons at quarterback. To me, this game feels like a coin flip game, and if you're giving me a touchdown line, now I know Arkansas, they're on the road here. That obviously makes things a little trickier for them, but you're giving me a touchdown line here in a game where I think it's a coin flip. I'm going to go ahead and take the underdog here, whether it be Ole Miss or Arkansas. If Ole Miss was +7, I'd take Ole Miss, obviously, at home. But I think it's a really tight game. I think Arkansas's offense has been very dynamic with their passing game. They obviously have that, again, Taylor Gracie, really great dual threat quarterback. Kwan Lacey, their running back, also very, very good stuff from him so far this year. So Arkansas's offense, they've got some firepower this year, and defensively, they're also pretty damn tough. Now, that's Ole Miss. Their offense also very strong. Their defense very strong, although their defense, there's been some question marks, specifically their ground game. Okay, Ole Miss's run defense so far tied for 113th in the nation through a couple of weeks, averaging 181 rushing yards allowed per game. It's a bit of a problem when you got the top 20 rushing team in Arkansas coming into town with Kwan Lacey, like I said, who's been a very strong running back for them through the first couple weeks of the season. So some concerns there with Ole Miss. Also, their secondary is built with a lot of transfer guys. That could be problematic here. On the flip side, Arkansas's defense, their run defense, not exactly the most efficient, and Ole Miss, they have made their money on the ground this year, averaging almost 260 rushing yards per game. It's going to be a real test for Arkansas's defense. We haven't really seen them be truly tested this year. Look at their 2 games they played, Arkansas State and AAMU. Not exactly tough games. At least Ole Miss, they did play Kentucky in Lexington, which is kind of a tough spot for them. That was a close game. I think Arkansas is a better team than Kentucky. That was a 7-point game. This should be a 7-point game. That's kind of really where the thought for this comes from. If Kentucky was able to keep that within 7, why can't Arkansas? And I think Arkansas is a better team than Kentucky. A lot to like from Arkansas. I think this team could possibly be ranked after this week, depending on the outcome. If they keep the game close, even in a loss, we could see them creep into the top 25. We'll see. But to me, Arkansas is one of the better teams this year in college football. So I like the Razorbacks on the spread +7. Again, very close game, not like last year. And I think that Arkansas, maybe you want to sprinkle a little something on money line. I might throw a little something on Arkansas money line here. But I think definitely at the very least the spread at +7 is a good play. All right, guys, 2 picks left. Our next one up, we have 2 of the best games of the week. Again, this game I'm about to talk about was supposed to be on Clash of the Titans, was supposed to be a ranked-on-ranked matchup, and then Florida obviously choked. So, spoiler alert, Florida at LSU. It's our next game. We're looking at 7:30 p.m. kickoff. I'm going with the Gators here on the spread, plus 7.5, which I'm grabbing for minus 120 right now over on FanDuel. Like I mentioned earlier, that game against USF was more about Florida throwing away opportunities more than it was USF dominating them. A lot of missed opportunities for that Gator team. Now, defensively, they actually were still pretty strong. They only gave up 18 points, to USF in that loss. You know, again, it's just really the offense really just didn't do their part in contributing. So I still think Florida's defense is tough here, and obviously LSU, they've had some question marks offensively. Now, they obviously played Clemson week 1. That was obviously a very tough game, a very good win for LSU. But they followed that up, and this has kind of been the trend with Brian Kelly, is that yes, he does win some of the big games. Not many, but some of the big games. But he usually follows it up with a disappointing performance. And you see here versus Louisiana Tech last week, all that momentum, it doesn't go out the window, but they were 36.5-point favorites against Louisiana Tech, and they beat them by 16. It was 23-7. The offense struggled quite a bit there. They haven't really done a great job running the football so far this season. That's alarming. If you're struggling versus Louisiana Tech, what does that tell us? You know, and the fact that Clemson, you know, last week versus Troy, they had their own struggles. It kind of tells us, was LSU really that good in week 1? Or was Clemson just that bad? And that's the question right now, because Clemson has not looked that great through a couple of weeks. LSU, they had that big win in week 1, but they followed it up with a disappointing performance in week 2. So there's still a lot to learn about this LSU team. I think this is a Florida team that's going to come into this game riled up. They were top 15 in the nation. They lose to USF. They fall outside the top 25. You know Florida's going to be fired up here in this spot. They're 7.5-point underdogs. Yes, it's on the road. Going to be a tough spot to play in. But I think Florida, this whole team's going to be motivated to come in here and do something, especially coming off of what happened last year. Last year, obviously, Florida had a massive upset win, beating LSU at home 27-16, one of the biggest wins of the year for Florida. They're going to look to see if they can't go ahead and do that again. Now, you could say the revenge factor for LSU, absolutely. But I do think this Florida team is still good enough. I think this is still one of the top 25 teams in the nation. Yes, they're not ranked right now, but I do think this Florida team can finish in the top 25. This is still a very good Florida team. I think it was just a matter of poor play. They just didn't bring their A game. I don't know if it was a matter of they were kind of sleepy versus USF. They kind of didn't take that opponent seriously enough. I don't really know what the case was with that one, but they just really shot themselves in the foot in that game. I expect DJ Lagway, who's a very talented quarterback in this Florida team, to be much better this time around. And LSU's defense, to be fair, has looked very, very strong through the first few weeks. The reason why I'm taking Florida ultimately in this game is the fact that I think this is another one, like we talked about with Arkansas and Ole Miss. This is a coin flip. I think it's going to be a very tight contest. I think these teams are not too far apart. I know LSU, after the Clemson win, they were getting a lot of hype, but I think the Louisiana Tech game kind of brings them back down to earth a little bit. I think this is going to be a very close game, and if you're giving me 7.5 points, I'm going to take Florida. I think that 7.5 point spread a little risky there for LSU. I don't know if I'd say Florida's going to win this game outright, but I do think they're going to be able to keep this game relatively close, at least within this number. If LSU was if the spread was 6.5 or 5.5 even, I probably would lean more LSU if I'm being honest. But you're giving me 7.5 points. This is a very close game. It's 2 teams that are both very, very strong SEC teams. I think Florida can keep this within 7.5 points. So I'm going with the Gators here, plus 7.5. Again, very tough line, especially coming off the game they had last week. It's kind of tough to put your money on Florida. But I do think the Gators, they're going to take that loss to USF, use it as motivation, and come into this LSU matchup ready to rock and roll and ready to have a fight with this LSU team. So give me Florida here, plus 7.5 on the spread. All right, guys, and our 10th and final play in today's video has all been leading up to this. If you guys obviously watched before, you know I'm a Notre Dame football fan. We've got number 16 ranked Texas A&M taking on number 8 ranked Notre Dame at Notre Dame, 7:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. And I do want to say this right before I obviously the pick's on screen now. So Notre Dame minus 6.5 is my play. I'm grabbing it for minus 115 on FanDuel was best available to me personally. But again, you guys have a lot of options to go ahead and tail this one. Before you guys go ahead and crap on me, I do want on the record, and you guys can go back and watch the Clash of the Titans video, I picked Miami against Notre Dame. So I don't want to hear the bias talk because obviously I did my Sunday Night Football video where I had the Ravens and the Bills. I mentioned off the bat I'm a Ravens hater. I picked the Ravens in the game, which obviously backfired on me. That game was incredible though, by the way. But I had some comments, people saying like I'm off, like I'm not listening to this guy, bias is, there's no place for bias in college football or betting, I should say. I'm a Notre Dame football fan, but I'm also someone who gives out sports picks. I only pick on my team if I truly like them in the spot. I'm not putting my biases here. I think this is a spot where Notre Dame definitely can and I think will cover the number. Again, I'm honest. I picked Miami to beat Notre Dame. I didn't like the spot for Notre Dame. It was C.J. Carr's first start. I liked Miami with the look. I think people were crapping on Carson Beck. He's an experienced quarterback in a nice offense in Miami. I always liked Miami in that spot. And I had to pick right. I didn't actually bet it myself because I don't bet against my team. But I gave that pick out. I said, guys, Miami's got it. Now I'm telling you, bias aside, I think Notre Dame covers the number of -6.5 here at home versus A&M. They're coming off a bye week. That's a huge factor here. They lost to Miami. Then they had a week to go ahead and go over the loss, fix some things. I think Marcus Freeman, that coaching staff, were so damn good. They're going to come off that Miami loss. They're going to go ahead and make the necessary adjustments. And now they have extra rest, extra time to prep for this A&M game versus where A&M, right, they played 2 games. They played, now granted, Utah State and UTSA. Not exactly the toughest start to the season for A&M. But they obviously are coming off a couple of games. They've played more. They're a little bit more fatigued than we are. I shouldn't say we, Notre Dame. Extra rest, extra time to prep, extra time to make adjustments. And I think that this game just means so much more to Notre Dame. For A&M, if they lose this game, they will have other opportunities throughout the rest of the season to go ahead and recoup the value, right? They can still make the playoff even if they lose to the Notre Dame. For Notre Dame, if they lose this game, their season could very well be over in terms of making it back to the college football playoff. The only way they'd be able to make it is if they go on a 10-game winning streak to close out the year, which they did technically do last year after the NIU loss. But you've got some tough games. You've got Arkansas, who we just talked about earlier, a team I really like this year. You got Boise State. You've got USC. You've got a couple of interesting games on the schedule. So it's not easy sailing for Notre Dame the rest of the way. And if they lose this game, they'd have to win out. And even winning out would not guarantee them a spot because this is the only right now ranked game left on their schedule. Now that could change. Maybe Boise State comes back in. Maybe Arkansas sneaks in the top 25. Unless that happens, though, and one of those teams on their schedule get in, this is the only ranked game left on the schedule. This is where being an independent can hurt you because there is no conference championship to play for. So if Notre Dame loses this game, the only 2 ranked teams as of now they have on the schedule are both losses. That's not going to be good come playoff time. The committee has made it clear. They're looking at the resumes. They want to see the bigger wins. This game is massive. If Notre Dame loses, even if they win out, they could still miss the playoffs. Win, though, and it takes a lot of the pressure off the rest of the season. So, the Miami loss was tough to start, but if they win this game, they can bounce back. A loss here, though, could be disastrous for the playoff hopes of Notre Dame. I think they all know that. Marcus Freeman knows that. C.J. Carr knows that. Everybody knows that. They are going to be better. They lost by 3 to Miami on the road with a new quarterback in a game where the offensive line had one of the worst performances from a Notre Dame offensive line in the last decade. It was terrible. It was really, 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 really bad. They could not protect the quarterback. They couldn't open lanes for the running game. Now, this Notre Dame offensive line is supposed to be one of the best in college football. There were even talks of them being the best in college football. Obviously, it did not show versus Miami. I don't know what the issue was. I'm hopeful it was just a one-game anomaly, and they'll be able to go ahead and correct those mistakes here against A&M. If they can't, this is going to be a long day for Notre Dame. But I do think the Irish, the biggest issue for them, honestly, was their offensive line. I do think it should be better in week 3 now, but their second game. And the Notre Dame defense, it didn't look great, but again, Miami's a really tough offense. What helps here is the fact that A&M's run defense has not been great. 83rd right now through 2 weeks, giving up 140.5 rushing yards per game. And again, that's against some inferior opponents. You have Notre Dame with Jeremiah Love, with the offensive line they have, and C.J. Carr. Although C.J. Carr is nowhere near the running quarterback that Riley Leonard was last year, I do think that Notre Dame should be able to run the ball better. Again, all their numbers are going to look pretty poor right now because they played one game, and it was that Miami game. But I am expecting a bounce back from Notre Dame here at home, too. It's a huge advantage here. They did beat A&M last year. Now, granted, Riley Leonard's running was a huge factor in that game. You're not going to quite get that from C.J. Carr this year, but they took care of business last year on the road early in the year. I think now at home, hosting A&M, I expect Notre Dame to go ahead and take care of business. And this little tidbit here, this insight from Outlier here, Notre Dame has covered the spread in their last 5 games at home, 100% hit rate, and some tough games there. I mean, Indiana, Florida State, not exactly a tough one. I actually was at this game last year when they hosted Florida State 52-3. Was an incredible experience. But, that Indiana game, obviously, I think it was a playoff game. So, that was a pretty big one. So, pretty good run. And again, 5-0 against the spread, 5-0 straight up. Really good run for Notre Dame at home. So, hoping that home field advantage will play a big factor in this game as well. Guys, that is it for me today. All 10 picks in this week's college football slate. As always, thank you very much for watching. One more time, please make sure to go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. We'll be back next week with another college football picks video. Until then, I hope you're all winners. Make sure to go ahead and check out all the other videos. We have the USF Miami video already out, the Georgia-Tennessee video already out, and the Notre Dame A&M video, which I just talked about, will also be out later on today. So make sure to go ahead and check all those out. Subscribe to the channel. We have a ton of great content beyond just college football that you guys might want to go ahead and check out. Until next time, guys, hope you're all winners. Let's go ahead and make some money, baby. Let's go.